Thank you, Emily. There we go. Okay, so just one slide about the Burnham Block. The Burnham Block is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Our roots go all the way back to 1993, but we started in earnest in 2017, focusing just on the 6 Frank Lloyd Wright designed houses built in the 2700 block of West Burnham in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're an all-volunteer organization. There are 41 volunteers. About half of them are docents, and the other half do all kinds of other stuff. And we have a mission that's pretty simple. It has 3 parts. We're here to preserve some buildings that were designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and constructed in 1916. We're here to create educational experiences for learners from 4th grade all the way through adults. And we provide inspiration, some places where people can come and be inspired by the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. I always break my talks down into 10 things. That way you know, if you're bored, how many more you have to go. So the first thing is Frank Lloyd Wright was really about thinking differently when it comes to this project as anything else he ever did. But I have this quote. This quote comes from a speech that Wright gave in Evanston, Illinois. It was published in the Western Architect in September 1916. And he's talking about the houses that are known as the American System-Built homes. He's talking specifically about our project. And he's talking about why he did it. And so in this case, he's saying simply selling houses at less cost means nothing to me. To sell beautiful houses at less cost means everything. A beautiful house means a truer, better house in every way.
Yes.
Frank Lloyd Wright was a bit of, he was out there, and this is his first major commission in what would be later known as the Prairie School or Prairie genre. This is the William Winslow House in River Forest, Illinois. It was done for his friend. It's said that William Winslow would take a train. He couldn't take the train next to his house or in the vicinity of his house to go to work in downtown Chicago. He had to go another train over because his friends would ridicule him and tease him for living in this house. But it was radical for the time and radical for Frank Lloyd Wright. Here's some more. I'm going through some houses because I want to give you some context. This is the Hertley House, Dana Thomas House in Springfield, Illinois, a beautiful home. The Martin Complex in Buffalo, New York. Coonley House in Riverside, Illinois. The Boak House in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But the reason I do this is because Frank Lloyd Wright had designed over 130 homes by the time he got to the Burnham Block. And he had done homes for clients with deep pockets like the Hertleys and the Winslows and so on. He had done that. He had already done that. But in the back of his mind, Frank Lloyd Wright was thinking as early as 1898 that people should live in a beautiful home connected to nature and the outdoors. It should be quiet and serene when you come home at the end of a busy day, and there should be places for the family to gather, among other things. And he's writing this stuff down and presenting it in speeches as early as 1898, and he carries this treaty all the way through to 1954 and beyond when he's writing in The Natural House, basically the same things. He's always thinking houses are not boxes, for example. He's, again, writing in magazines, the Ladies' Home Journal, a major publication of the time. He's writing about building houses for under $5,000 and homes in a prairie town in a small house with lots of room in it. He's not just making speeches, he's writing and trying to get people onto his bandwagon, if you will, and this comes between 1901 and 1907. Number 2. The American System-Built homes, the houses on the Burnham Block, are radical and wild and crazy, but they're also standardized and affordable. They were meant to be affordable so that everybody could live in a beautiful home. Frank Lloyd Wright, however, was not the only person experimenting in new ways to get people to live in a beautiful home. This is a patent filed in 1917. This patent is interesting. You've got a cement mixer on the left. You've got a conveyor belt that goes to the top of some steel forms that would build you a 2.5-story house. If you want to see what that house would look like, there it is. That's a model of it, with the guy who's behind it, none other than Thomas Edison. So Wright, Edison, all these people are thinking about new ways to do things that are not normal. They're stretching the boundaries of how you build houses and what a house is. You have people like the Sears and Roebuck Company doing the Craftsman Home series. We've all heard of these. We probably have dozens of these in our neighborhoods. And the Craftsman homes look like this. Interesting thing about the Craftsman home is you buy that model, and that model could be bought by 20,000 other people. And the difference between your house and the next house could be the paint color. We'll get back to that. Now I'm showing you all the cool slides. Okay. But what Wright was hoping for was that you wouldn't have a house that looked like every other house, that your standardized, affordable house would be unique to you and personal to you. And so this example I use often when I'm teaching Boy Scouts the Architecture Merit Badge, how terrible this must be to the spirit. You have 0 trees, you have 0 space next to your house, all the houses look alike. You've seen these as you fly over places like Orlando, Florida, and places where you drop in and you used to see communities that are one standard house after another, and they all basically look the same. How crushing to the spirit this would be. But Frank Lloyd Wright was thinking about affordable housing differently, and I found this in the Library of Congress a little while ago. This is a prospectus that the American System-Built Homes people put together with Frank Lloyd Wright, and here they're talking to prospective investors, people who might be willing to invest and put money into this project. And let's see if we can read this. Too small. You know what it says? It says the houses have to be unique. They can't be, you can do a system of construction, but you can't do it in a way that makes all of the houses look like they're the one before it or the one after it. You have to put uniqueness into it, and each house has to be special. In preparation for talking to you today, looking at the Pacific Palisades fire and listening to some of the people that are rebuilding in the Pacific Palisades area, and there's one builder that specifically says, we're going to take a house design and we're going to cut it up so that it can be prefabricated in a factory. We're going to be able to truck it to the site already built, but it's going to be a unique house. So we're not going to create a house like say a Wausau home. I don't want to cut on Wausau too much because we have a Wausau home in our family. But you know, a Wausau home looks like a Wausau home. You can tell. You can tell how that it came on 2 flatbed trucks and was craned onto the job site. That's not what they're trying to do in the Pacific Palisades. That's not what Wright was intending. He wanted you to have an infinite variety in the homes that you were creating. And they were telling this to prospective investors. This was part of it, baked into the deal. He also wanted to make sure that everybody could afford the house. And so here he's talking about the connection to the automobile and Henry Ford and the Model T, another contemporary doing the same sorts of things that Wright is doing. And in this document that they're talking to prospective investors, they say, look, we need basic needs, we need food, we need shelter. And you know, what he's saying is, at the end of the day, we haven't solved the problem of standardizing the way we build shelter. We haven't figured this out yet. And so he's trying to do it, and he's pointing to Ford and saying, we're going to do what Ford did to the automobile. We're going to democratize housing, if you will, so that where Ford, you had the Model T in everybody's driveway, that was the phrase that was common. Now he wants everybody to have a Frank Lloyd Wright designed beautiful home, or at least an architect designed beautiful home. So that's his vision for the American System-Built homes. These are meant to be an infinite variety of spaces for people to live, and they're supposed to be beautiful. This happens to be a cool photograph. It is a Model T Ford Roadster in front of our Model C3 Frank Lloyd Wright house on the Burnham Block in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the 4 people that are connected to this car right now were one of them was the earliest tenant of the house on Burnham, the house that they're in front of. But just a cool connection. Okay, number 3. This has to be done in collaboration. Frank Lloyd Wright, literally in the studio up the hill here at Taliesin, was drawing these homes with a staff of draftsmen and so on. But he by himself couldn't do this project alone. So there's another character I need to introduce you. His name is Arthur L. Richards. And Arthur Richards is a Milwaukeean. He's used to being a developer. He's used to taking out newspaper ads. This was a full-page newspaper ad that Richards took out in the Milwaukee Sentinel newspaper in 1904, where he's showing different dots on the map of the city of Milwaukee where he's building houses. And he's touting the fact that he's buying his materials in bulk and he's got his own crews and they're manufacturing, or they're not manufacturing, they're stick building these houses in these different locations in Milwaukee. So Arthur Richards, the developer. Now, this is from the contract between Arthur Richards, the developer, and Frank Lloyd Wright. And what it basically says is, we're going to pay a royalty up to the first $1 million, and then we're going to pay a different percentage after the first $1 million. Now just let that sink in for a minute. These guys weren't thinking small. They wanted to build these houses in every city, village, and town across the United States of America. The contract called for them to go up to Canada and build some more. They were going to go down to Mexico and build some there. They were going to go across the pond and build some more in Europe. Frank Lloyd Wright and Arthur Richards were hoping to be revolutionaries in building affordable housing for everybody, a beautiful home, as we like to say it, across the planet. Number 4, they developed a new system of marketing. This is a full-page newspaper ad from the Chicago Tribune newspaper in July 1917 with a banner, a rendering of one of the American system-built homes, a banner headline, "You can own an American home," some flowery text about what it might be like to live in this home, and then on the bottom you would see a list of the builders or dealers who would construct them for you. So the theory was, or the hope was, that you would see the newspaper advertising. Imagine an architect advertising, taking out a full-page newspaper ad in the Chicago newspaper 109 years ago. That by itself was revolutionary. So Frank Lloyd Wright's doing this with Richards, and they send you to the dealer, and at the dealer's office you see laid out in a showroom or sales area all these different drawings of the different models that Frank Lloyd Wright had drawn. Interesting fact, Frank Lloyd Wright had done over 966 drawings for this project, making it the largest file of drawings that Frank Lloyd Wright did for any of his projects throughout his entire career. Spent more time on this and these drawings than anything else he ever did. But here we have some different models of the homes. I see the model A4 and the D1, and then we're going to take a little bit of a comparison trip here. Frank Lloyd Wright was not the only person doing this sort of thing. The American system-built homes were not totally unique or alone. Their difference was that Frank Lloyd Wright was the architect. But in this case, you see two side-by-side examples of marketing. And the 1915 drawing on the right is the Sherman, and that's from a company called Aladdin Homes. And notice the floor plan is just a bunch of stick drawings. You know, the living room is 16 by 22 or whatever it is. And then you look at the Frank Lloyd Wright American System-Built Home Model B1, and Wright's filled it in with furniture. He's given you plants in the flower pots, he's giving you hats in the closets, he's giving you the breakfast nook is set for breakfast. He's basically showing you how to live in one of his homes, in one of his creations. Number 5, this was also a system of design. So I think there are at least 12 series of homes, 81 different models represented, some garages. The homes ranged in size. This is the model E3. It's a 3-story American system-built home. It had 5 bedrooms and room for 2 maids besides. So they went from pretty large to the tiniest Frank Lloyd Wright home, or the smallest Frank Lloyd Wright home ever built. We have this on the Burnham Block in Milwaukee. It's the model B1. It's a 1-story, 2-bedroom home, and it's 805 square feet. And there it is. This house was restored in 2008-2009 with a Save America's Treasures grant, matching fundraising done to support the Save America's Treasures grant, and yeah, there you have it. This wasn't just for single-family homes, so there were also multi-families. This is the Monkvitz apartment buildings. They were built in Milwaukee in 1917. Here they are in real life. They actually were torn down, unfortunately, in the 1970s, urban renewal. This is, I think, where the rubber hits the road. Here you have the A200 series of the American system-built homes. You have a floor plan for the A200 series, and then you have 3 different roof lines. So Frank Lloyd Wright gave you the option as the customer of meeting with the dealer and working out your needs, whether you needed a 2, 3, 4 bedroom home. But he also gave you the ability to choose whether your Frank Lloyd Wright designed home had a flat roof, a hip roof, or a gable roof. So you as a customer became part of the design process. You were involved and engaged in the design. I always like to joke with our guests at the Burnham Block that if you want to complain about a Frank Lloyd Wright roof leaking, well, in this case, you were the one that chose the flat roof. Knock your socks off. This is that home built in Shorewood, Wisconsin, the A200 with the hip roof. And number 6, this is a system of production. So this slide really kind of illustrates what's going on here. So notice how the different angles are, you have different cuts into the wood, there's different dado cuts, there's angles. This is a pretty complicated thing to pull off. And this is a cross section for an American system built home. This happens to be detail sheet K1. That doesn't mean anything necessarily, except that these are interchangeable standardized parts. So when Frank Lloyd Wright is saying we're gonna create homes that are unique and special, they are, but they're doing it with a collection of standardized parts that they're shuffling and jiggling and moving around and making it all work. And they're doing the heavy lifting, like in this case, they're showing you how to do a porch rail. And so the connection, I suppose, is would you rather do that porch rail and those fancy cuts in the rough environment of the 1916 building construction site, like you're seeing here? We don't really have an opportunity to put great tools in there, and some of those cuts are pretty fancy. Or would you like to use the lumber yard or the lumber mill with fancy heavy machines and prefabricate as much as you could in the comfortable confines of a heated mill or fabrication shop? Frank Lloyd Wright, all the way back to 1898, was talking about using the machine to build and create his houses, and he's went back to that theme over and over and over again. Sometimes it was just expediency, like I can do it better in the factory. Sometimes it was he was trying to make sure that wood grains, for example, would come out. You wouldn't do a heavy-duty carving of some railing and change the structure or the composition of the wood to make a fancy railing. Those things are really cool in Victorian mansions, but Wright would prefer that you saw the wood grains, that you let the nature come out of the materials that you were using, that you'd let them speak for themselves. Number 7, this was a system of construction. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm one slide ahead. This would also wrap up with you putting together a bill of materials for your Frank Lloyd Wright design home. The bill of materials would end up being called into the Richards Company in Milwaukee, who is the logistics, they were the suppliers of this series of homes. You'd get on a phone call, you'd order your Frank Lloyd Wright design home. You might have had the 2, the 3, the 4 bedroom, you might have had the garage with it. But at the end of the day, they would package all the materials together in Milwaukee, pre-cut all the lumber, put it on a railroad car, and send that railroad car to the rail siding closest to where you'd purchased your Frank Lloyd Wright, your lot, and then your local builder would build your Frank Lloyd Wright home for you. So it's a system of construction. This was unique. Frank Lloyd Wright was experimenting in this project. That we're doing 2-foot on center framing. We're using new materials. This was a product called Elastica Stucco. This was almost an abject failure from what we can see from a preservation standpoint. It didn't work, but it was new and novel, and he was trying everything, right? He was always out there and pushing ahead in doing new materials. Number 8. We only have a few of these houses. World War I limited the success of this project. So as these guys are ready to go to market and start selling these things, all of a sudden the country is engaged in World War I. You have things going on like downtown Milwaukee on Grand Avenue. You have thousands of people marching in a preparedness march, and it says something like 100,000 people on the sidewalks. This country's ready to go to war. Wartime inflation takes over. The price of building materials goes through the roof. There's no parallel to today. And so all of a sudden, Frank Lloyd Wright's project, this grand project to build affordable housing for everybody, gets kind of pushed to the wayside. And Frank Lloyd Wright does head off to Japan to work on the Imperial Hotel project. These are the sites where the homes are located. There are about 20 of them that were completed in Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa, and Illinois. This is our block, the Burnham Block. So here you see 5 of the 6 houses. The B1 you see on the right, and then 4 duplexes. A little bit of it up close on one of the duplexes, fully restored. And then let's go through some quick restoration slides. I mentioned before that we use the Save America's Treasures grant administered by the National Park Service. We're greatly appreciate that money. We follow standards in the most strictest sense of the word. Here's some befores. This is the model B1 before. This is the model B1 after. So that's what we do. Here's a before of the living room. Here's an after. Before and after. And here's a before of the kitchen. And and after. Before and after. We had, in several of our projects, we've had some great help from the School of Architecture and Urban Planning at UWM. There's Matt Jaros right there. Is Matt still here with us? Nope, not here right now. Nope, you missed your cameo. Here's a student doing some sampling on some of the wood trim on the ceiling. Please don't call OSHA on us. And we went through the normal restoration process. So wrapping the house to take off, to abate the asbestos and lead paint, all the usual fun stuff. Windows, old glass, tradesmen figuring out stucco methods that haven't been done in the United States in forever. This is our current project. We started doing remediation on this last Monday. This is the Model C3 on the Burnham Block. And then last but not least, inspiration. I wanted to throw this in. I've never used this slide before. This is my son's living room. That's his forest, that juniper or whatever it is. And that concrete block wall is his view from his living room. He's lived there for 5 years. I think he's a little whacked out and maybe perhaps demoralized because some developer on University Avenue thought it'd be cool to put a project like that with no view. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright would never do that. So. Oops, we're going the wrong way. I'm going to skip that one. So come visit us on the Burnham Block. We see thousands and thousands of people every year. The hardest part is our inspiration thing, and we're working really, really, really hard on that and working to really create an experience where people can come and say, I could live here. It is true that about 60% of the people that come to visit the Burnham Block say that. And I think it's because of the mastery and wizardry of Frank Lloyd Wright and figuring out the geometry of space and making all the rooms feel a little bit bigger than they are. And when you're in that living room and it's raining outside, you know it's raining. And when it's snowing, you know it's snowing. He has connected you to nature. He's done what he intended to do. It's a special place and quite remarkable, and come visit us. Thank you.